Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Sean D. Standfast's inaugural BookTube event, Dune in June, where we are reading Frank Herbert's masterpiece, Dune, in the month of June. We have a schedule. The first week of June is the first part of this book, which is called Dune. First part of Dune is called Dune. Then the second week in June is the second part of this book, which is called Muad'Dib. And then the third part of June, the third week, will be The Prophet, which is the third and final part of this book. And then there are appendices at the end that I want to talk about, but we're not devoting a week to them. The fourth week of June will be devoted to me trying, in vain, to arrange some sort of live discussion with my co-hosts of all the various cinematic adaptations of Dune. We will try and try and try, and we will fail to do that. Won't that be fun? But I'll talk about those adaptations on my own. Plenty in that week. I've been making orientation videos for this book, primer videos, to demystify it just a bit. Because this comes with a lot of baggage. If you don't know, if you've never read this book, but you will have heard about it. You will have heard that it is incredibly good, that it is considered a masterpiece. That can be a little bit daunting. I wanted to make a couple of orientation videos to stress the fact that it's only information that you need to know. You don't need to know anything more than that with this or with any other book. It's just, you maybe need to know a little more information to start it. You don't, actually, of course. Those of us who read it originally didn't have any information. We didn't have any primer videos. There wasn't any internet. There weren't any computers. And we got along just fine. I'm not meaning to undercut Frank Herbert's ability as an author. He brings you up to speed. But the intimidation factor is still there, and I wanted to lessen it as much as I could by making a primer video about the premise of this book, and then a bit of a primer video introducing the cast of this book. And then, recently, I've been reading each little chapter of the book. The book doesn't have actual chapters, but it has chapter-length segments. And I've been reading each of those and going through them just a bit. Tremendous fun for me. I wasn't sure that any of you would enjoy it, but a lot of you say that you are. So I'm going to continue just a bit. Of course, the timing of Dune in June will far outstrip this kind of an approach. It'll leave us way behind if we're doing just one chapter a day. But I thought we'd go to so-called chapter number 4. And the very first thing that you're going to notice about chapter number 4 is that the epigraph at the beginning of the chapter is yet another book by Princess Irulan. This is called Muad'Dib Family Commentaries. So she's written a lot. This Princess Irulan person has written a lot about the story that we're reading. That's interesting in its own way. It's intriguing. At the beginning of this book, you don't know that you're going to meet Princess Irulan. You don't know that she's going to be a character in the book. She is. But you do know one thing. Those epigraphs tell you one thing, which is that this story is already known. It's happening, it's unfolding in real time as we read it, but the epigraphs to every chapter are meant to historically contextualize it. The beginning, the middle, and the end, the whole modus operandi, the whole cast of characters is all known. They're in the books, literally in the history books. So that's interesting. That, I think, adds a gravitas to it, makes it feel like this. It underscores that these are momentous events that we're seeing. And we have seen in our early chapters, the first chapter, a Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit comes to the planet Caladan to examine, to probe, to test the Atreides' heir, Paul Atreides, to give him the Gom Jabbar, a test to make sure that he's human. The Bene Gesserit are very interested in the fact that he's human. They want him to be human because they still want to try and use him in their extended breeding program, even though he's not the daughter that Lady Jessica, his mother, was ordered to give Duke Leto. He's a son instead. She gave Duke Leto a son out of love. When the sisterhood wanted her to produce a daughter to further their breeding program, she doesn't do that. The hope was that daughter would marry another bloodline and produce the Kwisatz Haderach, produce a mystical totality figure that the Bene Gesserit are in earnest to produce. A man who has their mental and physical powers. The Reverend Mother is now not sure, she's not sure at all that Paul will ever be that. This is probably a mistake. And there are bigger issues at stake. The House Atreides has been ordered by the Emperor to pick up sticks from Caladan and move the whole household to the planet Dune, which was, until now, the fiefdom of House Harkonnen, the sworn enemies of the Atreides. So Duke Leto knows that he's walking into a trap, and that's not a spoiler. These characters are talking about that right from the beginning. And behind closed doors, the Reverend Mother and Lady Jessica, who is a member of the Bene Gesserit, are talking about it in far more absolutist and darker terms. They are talking openly about the fact that there is no hope for the Duke himself. He will not survive this trap. Paul Atreides has overheard them talking like that and is upset about it. Says, you two are talking about my father like he's already dead. He's not. And the Reverend Mother tells him to his face, there's nothing the Sisterhood can do to save him. If there were, we would. What a horrible thing for a 14-year-old boy to hear. Paul is of deep interest to the Reverend Mother because, in addition to being trained in the Bene Gesserit way by his mother and being the only heir to the Duke, he's also experiencing visions. He's experiencing precognitive dreams that come true. Not just the random flotsam and jetsam of dreaming, but dreams that have purpose. Dreams that he knows ahead of time. This is a special dream. This will happen. And they do happen. The Reverend Mother tries to examine him about that, but she isn't staying long. She tests him and then she goes. We get a conversation between her and Jessica, a brief interchange between her and Paul, and then she heads off planet, heads back home. She is the Emperor's truthsayer, so she's got other things on her plate. And the chapter that we're reading today takes place a little while after that, 10 days later. It's been a little bit of a while. There's been time for Paul to think about it, time for all of the people in the household. We're still preparing to move to Dune. The move will be soon. In fact, in this chapter, we're told it's the following day. It's time for all of the people in the household to realize that Paul was really rattled by the old woman's visit. They don't know the contents of it, but they know that he was really rattled by it. And Paul is alone in a training room at the beginning of this chapter when Thufir Hawat enters the room. We've had Thufir Hawat has been mentioned to us before. He is a master assassin and a mentat. He is the Duke Leto's mentat. Mentats are human computers, human vector analysis machines, because there are no AI, there are no advanced computers in this world. They are forbidden. So mentats take their place. For a lot of the functions you would want a computer for, mentats take their place. Not just for advanced calculation, but for a lot of other things as well. And Thufir Hawat, we are told, he tells us right away as the chapter begins, has served 3 generations of the Atreides household. The old Duke, who we've already had referred to, he's already been referred to a couple of times in the book. He is gone. We never meet the old Duke in the novels, but we know that he had a picaresque ending. He died in the bullfighting ring. We're going to learn that later in the book. He died in the bullfighting ring. And the head of the bull that killed him, the horns of the bull that killed him, is preserved and mounted on the walls of Keep Atreides. But then there's Duke Leto Atreides, who is a very main character in this book that we haven't met yet. His appearance, his introduction to the reader is skillfully delayed. And now there's Paul Atreides, the heir. So Thufir Hawat is thinking in his mind, I've served 3 generations of this family. And we are told over and over again in this chapter that introduces him, this is the first we meet him, how old he is. How old he is, how seamed and wrinkled and old he is. It comes up over and over again. In fact, in a corner of the training room where he meets Paul in this chapter, there's a training dummy, a remote-controlled robot thing that you can practice swordsmanship on. Swordsmanship is very active in this future world. There are no guns, there are no bullets, there are no Tommy guns, there are no handheld lasers. Everybody has a personal energy shield at their belt that deflects all such things or turns them into atomic bombs. So nobody uses them. They use knives and blades instead. And they have to get really good at them. Because if you can get past a personal shield with a blade if you move slow enough, controlled enough. We learn all that in this chapter. And in the corner of this room, there's a practice droid that can be used to practice your swordsmanship and your knifesmanship. And it's battered and patched and whatnot. It's been used by who knows how many Atreides fighting men. And when Thufir Hawat sees it, he thinks, that's me. Which is an odd note of self-pity for someone who's supposed to be a human computer. And it underscores the point that I wanted to make, which is that both of the mentats that we get in this book are not prime mentats. They are not serving the way they should. One is crazy and one is old, and maybe a little bit self-pitying. And Thufir Hawat talks to young Paul in a completely different way than his mother does, and a completely different way than the Reverend Mother did. He talks to young Paul as someone who's been teaching him since infancy, which is true. The excerpt from one of Princess Arelyn's books at the beginning of this chapter says, you've all heard that Paul Atreides had no playmates. It was too big a risk when he was a little boy. But he did have instructors who were his familiars from his earliest childhood. There was Duncan Idaho, the swordsmaster. There was Gurney Halleck, the scarred battle troubadour. And there was Thufir Hawat, the Mentat assassin. So we get their names. Their names are invoked a few times. Now we meet them. We meet Thufir Hawat. He comes in, chides Paul just a little for sitting with his back to the door. And they go over a little bit about what Arrakis, Dune, is going to be like. Paul is naturally curious to know. Thufir Hawat has learned all about the place and is shipping out right away. He's going in the second wave. Paul goes in the third wave. So when they next meet, as he tells Paul, it will be on the sun of a new world. They're leaving Caladan. They will almost certainly never be back to these rooms, to this beautiful planet. They will almost certainly never return. Paul has all sorts of questions about Dune. And we, as readers, if you're reading this for the 10th time, a shiver's going to go up your spine about this conversation. If you're reading it for the first time, you're not going to notice anything, and it's just as well. But Paul asks Thufir Hawat, is Arrakis that bad? Is it really that bad? Tell me about the storms. And Thufir Hawat tells him about the gigantic sandstorms, monstrous sandstorms that reach such enormous ferocity and speed that they can strip the flesh off bone and then splinter and chip bone. And that nothing can live in such a storm. That's going to be crucial in the middle of this book, and it's going to be crucial at the end of this book. But it's just a detail now. Paul is curious about the storms, and they continue talking, and Paul says, have you ever seen a Fremen? The Fremen are the native peoples of Dune. They aren't part of the villages and the little marketplaces, but they live out in the sand, in the deserts of Dune. They're the wild people of Dune. You might even call them sand people. They're the wild people of Dune. The Harkonnens hate them, and they hate the Harkonnens. The Harkonnens hunt them for sport. And Thufir Hawat is a little confused. He mentions that as a Mentat, he has calculated from the information that he's got about Dune that there are a whole lot more Fremen than anybody thinks. But he's confused. First, Paul's asking about storms. Then he's asking about the Fremen. Paul also asks, why? Well, if they have these monster storms, why don't they have weather control? Why don't they have satellite-controlled weather on Dune? And Hawat has to say, well, it's a very tough planet on equipment. There's sand and dust in the air all the time. It would be murderously expensive to do. That's why it isn't done. That's why it's a meteorologically wild planet. But when Paul is thinking storms, satellites, weather control, Fremen, Hawat's reaction is, boy, his mind is jumping all over the place. As longtime readers and rereaders of the book, we know that something else is going on here. Paul doesn't know what it is, but his mind is starting to put pieces of a puzzle together that is going to take hundreds of pages to do. Especially when the next thing he asks about is Seleucia Secundus, the brutal planet where the emperor trains his imperial Sardaukar, his killer soldiers, his death commandos that strike terror into the hearts of all the great houses because they could tear apart the armed forces of those great houses. Seleucia Secundus is their homeworld, and it is reputed to be a brutal place for training. Paul thinks storms, satellites and weather control, Fremen, Seleucia Secundus. He doesn't draw any lines between those two. Hawat doesn't draw any lines between those two. He has no idea why Paul's mind is jumping all over the place. And we don't draw any lines between any of those things when we're reading it the first time. But it's wonderful to reread it and see that Frank Herbert knew what he was doing. He had a lot of this stuff in mind already. He had thoroughly plotted this thing out. Lived with it. Hawat has just that conversation with Paul. I'll be going soon. You'll be following. We'll make the best of it. Never mind what that old lady said from the Imperium. We'll make the best of it. And then Hawat leaves, and Paul gets another visitor in the same chapter, Gurney Halleck, the troubadour war master of Duke Leto Atreides, a small lump of a man with a bright scar down his face that we are told in this chapter was inflicted on him by Beast Rabban, who's not yet thoroughly identified, but he is another relative of Baron Harkonnen. He is a Harkonnen. And he inflicted that scar on Gurney Halleck while he was killing all of Gurney Halleck's family in the slave pits on Gedi Prime, the homeworld of the Harkonnens that we saw 2 chapters ago. So Gurney Halleck, he was rescued from the Harkonnens by the Atreides. That's why he is undyingly loyal to Duke Leto Atreides and the family. But that's also why he's undyingly hating of the Harkonnens. He hates them and wants his revenge. Somehow, someday, wants his revenge. But he's not really thinking about that now. He's thinking about that more than we ever see him think about it. In this chapter, we learn he is more melancholy and morose, more reflective than we ever see Gurney at all, at any other point in the book. He's in a few books. We don't see him this way again. He's moody, maybe because he's leaving Caladan. I don't think he's not a native of Caladan, but he's spent a lot of time there, same as everybody else. So this change is causing moods in everybody. Gurney jokes with Paul. He sings him a little tune, and they duel. They practice dueling. So that we can see what that's like. And also so that we can know that not only is Paul proficient in dueling, he can hold his own with Gurney at least for a few seconds, but also, as Gurney observes, that he is teaching himself a whole bunch of new variations, new moves, new tricks, in addition to the physical training that he's getting from his mother, that he's certainly not getting from Duncan Idaho or Gurney Halleck, because they aren't Bene Gesserit. They don't know how to do it. I think that's one of the purposes of this chapter, is to acquaint us with the fact that although Paul is young and small for his size, he is physically formidable. He's not just a boy. He's a warrior. Maybe an unblooded warrior, but still. If he were to be thrown into violent circumstances, he could hold his own a little. This chapter certainly does that. He's not a weakling. He's not a reedy little 90-pound tobacco addict with gigantic 40 pounds of product-laden hair. I don't know who would cast him like that. Anyway, that's the end of this chapter. We meet Thufir Hawat and we meet Gurney Halleck, and we see them both interact with young Paul. And then the chapter ends. The action is not far off. The move is right on the horizon. It's right coming up, but it hasn't happened yet. We're still on Caladan. And that's all there is here. This chapter is really just a low-key, skillful way of introducing the new reader to more of this cast of characters. We're getting them very slowly, bits and pieces, one or a couple at a time. I think that's well done, very well done. So that's the next chapter here, and we will move on. Maybe I'll do another one for tomorrow. You all seem to enjoy it. As we continue on with Dune in June. How much fun is that? So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.